It is now time for us to get started with our first episode of FoxTales. And I do want to thank everybody who's signed in. We have a pretty good crowd for our first take at this. Just by way of introductions, my name is James Devine. I'm VP of Operations for SnowFox. Been with the organization since essentially the beginning, about 3.5 years ago. I've also been in the ServiceNow space since 2009, so well into my second decade of working on these in the ServiceNow space and IT for a lot longer than I care to mention. Joined today by John Manner and Paul Schaefer. So let me go ahead and let them do some intros. John, do you want to go ahead and do a quick intro?
Absolutely. Thank you, James. Similar story. I started out in the ServiceNow industry as a customer back in 2009, and I've been in the ecosystem for 15, 16 years now.
Awesome. Hey everyone, Paul Schaefer. I run our managed services here at SnowFox. Like John and James, been in the ecosystem for a while, both as a customer and as a partner, and really looking forward to today's conversation. Thanks for joining, everybody.
All right. So, and for those of you who might not be familiar with SnowFox and who we are, we're a ServiceNow implementation partner, a professional service organization with a lot of very senior people on the team, paired up with people that we have groomed from the very beginning to be the next generation of ServiceNow talent. So, quite an interesting mix of people that we have here on the team, and we're happy to be entering our fourth year of implementing ServiceNow. So. More about us at a later date, but I want to go ahead and get into our topic today. We're going to be talking about what everybody is talking about, AI, artificial intelligence, but I think we're going to be talking about it a little bit differently. One of the things that we constantly see is that people are very hyped up about the capabilities of AI, and there is no shortage of reason to be hyped up about it. But think those of us that have been through a lot of these evolutions of technology over the years have recognized that no matter how great the new technology is, the fundamentals still matter. So that's why we subtitled today's episode, Why Fundamentals Still Win. So we'll not speak to the slides a whole lot, but we do want to talk about where fundamentals place in the AI era. And then we'll have a couple other topics as we get into this. So just to set the stage for the conversation between my colleagues and I here today, I want to talk about the fact that a lot of business leaders are overwhelmed by the amount of noise that comes into the conversation around AI, and it is very similar to those of us who experienced the initial boom of the dot-com era and even the onset of the internet as we know it back in the early to mid 90s. It's very easy for people just to throw buzzwords around and forget that the fundamentals still matter. So we want to make sure we're talking about that. So things like implementing ServiceNow or any other transformation, whether it's software or process or anything, still requires the same amount of discipline. It still takes rigor. It still takes real adoption. It takes organizational change management. All of these things still matter. AI can help with those, but it doesn't necessarily solve or replace any of those. So we're going to zoom out just a little bit today from the hype cycle and talk about what still matters even when we are overwhelmed with the shiny new object. So I'm going to do a quick lightning round here for we'll go with Paul first and then John. So what is one word that you would describe to describe the AI moment that we're in right now?
Yeah, that's a tough one. Depends on if you're an optimist or a pessimist, right? So I'll land in the middle somewhere and kind of go with chaos. I think a lot of people are feeling the influx of new tools and capabilities, probably more than we've ever seen before. I'll hit James on your point on we've actually been here before with some other disruptors like this, but I think chaos is a fair word just because a lot of folks are having a hard time, aligning to where they want to go, what they want to build on, what tools they want to choose. And rightfully so. New tech in this space is literally coming out daily at this point. So it makes it really hard for organizations to see any sort of normalcy through all the chaos and noise.
All right, John, what's your one word to describe the AI moment?
Similar word, I think. My word is uncertainty. There's a lot of uncertainty in the in the hype cycle we're in, and yes, we've gone through a number of different hype cycles. The World Wide Web is apparently going to be here for a while, so we know that one's sticking, right? The .com is, but AI is interesting because it's changing dynamics around how people are working, and it's also changing, just be transparent with what we're talking about, it's changing how people are being employed. And that's going to be a very painful thing at the start of this, but on the end of it, there's a lot of value coming out of it, and people's jobs will change dramatically. And so there's just a lot of uncertainty around this, and we're all in this hype cycle at different points. And to Paul's point, I think I'm just going to take it as realists. There's some good and there's some bad, but there's a lot of value that we'll see at the end of this.
All right, well, let's go a little bit deeper. So we have chaos and uncertainty. I think a lot of people are feeling that and have been for a little while. So let's go back to Paul. Tell me, how are you seeing the customers you're talking to who are faced with or in the middle of implementing AI, and how are you seeing it impacting what they're doing? And then what distractions are you seeing coming from that?
Yeah, great question. I think, for me, what I'm seeing is just a lot of questions. Obviously us specializing on the ServiceNow platform, there's a couple of things we have to remember. And I kind of want to tee this off with just, a reminder of Amara's law, right? Roy Amara, he was a scientist and technologist, and he came up with this, we tend to overestimate the effect of a technology in the short run and underestimate the effect in the long run. And really, what he's saying there is don't chase the hype, right? Build for the long-term strategy, build to what you know is right. And we're getting a lot of questions around the fundamentals of disrupting technologies like this, around data governance, human governance, and through all of this, process alignment. And we're seeing that with ServiceNow. They've done, gosh, I think 5 acquisitions in 2025 supporting AI capabilities on the platform. They're not all done. They're not all rolled out and operationalized. So, we have to remind ourselves that even with a tech giant like ServiceNow, their adoption, their implementation, and their rollout is going to take some more time. They're estimating another 18 to 24 months before we really see all of their acquisitions working together. And that's a great reminder, for our customers as we're talking with them. It's like, it's okay, take a deep breath, remember to focus on the fundamentals, right? Focus on data governance, focus on the long-term vision. Don't get caught up in that hype of a cool new widget just because it's available. And that's kind of been my message talking with people is, hey, let's look at this from a different perspective. Let's start with some of the basics of AI and just get some of those, agents going and things of that nature to, really ease into it. So that's, been my advice over the past few months is take a deep breath. We've been here before with other disruptive technologies. Though this one's coming in faster and we are seeing daily innovation, it's the same approach.
All right, John, your thoughts?
I just had lunch with a former coworker last week. He's in plant control technology, and we were talking about AI because everybody talks about AI at lunch now. And for his company, um, when customers are asking him about how they're leaning into AI, his first response always is, "Well, we're going to protect your data first," because there's been a lot of just rush to do AI. And back to the fundamentals, it's where is that going? How is it impacting your processes? Where's your data being stored? And are the customers happier? Are they getting more satisfaction out of what you're doing? And so that's where a lot of the teams are feeling right now. It's like, well, do we have to do AI, and where should we do it? Where should we step into it? And some companies, if for example, the plant control company I just mentioned, they're taking a very slow start to it. They want to make sure that there's always a human in the middle, and augmenting the processes where they're actually needed. But it's going to be different for every company. And then back to what we get into more in this discussion is like, what are those fundamentals that we have to always align to, and overall, are the customers happier?
Yeah, absolutely. A question that I'm frequently pushing back customers when they're asking us to give them AI is I'm trying to get down to specific use cases. So let's talk specifically, what are the desired outcomes? Is it faster response times? Is it higher customer service? What specifically are we trying to do? Because I think it's very easy to get wrapped up in saying, hey, just install AI. And I'm not even sure what that means. So that's still, AI helps us accomplish things. It helps us do them faster and in a lot of cases better. We still have to know what it is we're trying to accomplish, though. And one more brief talking point on just the Gartner hype cycle. This is something that we've been talking about quite a bit for the last year or so, especially. We referenced the early days of the internet back in the early 90s when we were still with Gopher and Usenet and Mosaic and some really good oldies like that some of us will remember. And then, yeah, .com era when everybody started, using their dial-up connections to get on and they could do transactions. There was a time where somebody with a domain name and a one-page business plan could raise millions in startup funding. And I think that's what led to a pretty big bubble. I'm not saying necessarily that AI is going to lead to a bubble, but some people are. What I'm saying is that we need to be realistic. I think Paul, yeah, you kind of nailed this, is that we have the realistic expectations of how this is going to change our world in the long run. That's where the real value is, and it's not what we can just hurry up and rush out the door and slap an AI label on it. So, and again, there are plenty of people who will dispute the validity of the Gartner hype cycle, but at least for me, I've seen this enough times to know that this is typical because people get very excited, and then that excitement takes on a life of its own, and investors love it, and business leaders love it, even if they don't necessarily know what is going to change. They just know that it is change. So
Yeah.
that's where we are. So I think we've done a pretty good job of beating up on the current AI hype. So let's talk a little bit more about the fundamentals and the approaches that still need to be there with or without any kind of AI or any other technology. And John, I'm going to leave with you on this one as the person I consider to be the father of the boring approach to project management. That's one of the things that you brought to the organization, is a focus on having projects be boring. Tell us what that means and why people should want that.
Okay, well, thank you for making me the father of the boring project. I think that's something I can hang my hat on eventually. But you have to go back, and not just in our world, in ServiceNow world. I think anytime you do a implementation project, there's always a level of PTSD from the leadership once they've been through a project. There's always chaotic, there's always cost overruns, there's always resourcing issues, there's always something. And so when we start to mention, hey, this project is boring, the value is exciting, the technology is exciting, but the project is going to be extremely boring. That resonates. Why does it resonate with everybody? Because they've been through projects that have not been boring and they don't ever want to do that again. Now, when we say that we do boring projects, what does that mean? Well, it means that we're franchising every piece of our methodology so it's consistent and it's blocking and tackling. Someone told me that you either do every step of a project throughout the project timeline, or you have to do it all at the end and catch up. When you do it all at the end and catch up, that is not a very boring project. And so our goal, our utopia, is to get to the boring projects from start to finish, so everyone knows what's going to happen exactly when, and there's no surprises. And it's not anything exciting, it's boring. But the intent is that it's consistent. It's a franchise model, and that's what we're driving across the board, and it resonates.
Deal. Paul, anything you'd want to pick up on that?
Yeah, I think I'd like to use a couple of different descriptors here. So, when you look at boring projects, I think another term that we use internally is control, right? And not in a bad way, but when you're focusing on risks and issues consistently, and you're bringing that control element to the project, you're just not allowing it to get out of control, to be noisy and loud. Boring is also quiet, and when you're in control, then you've got a quiet and a boring project. So doing those fundamentals and making sure that you're addressing scope concerns, that you're really doing thorough workshops and gathering those requirements, that you're sprinting consistently, you're testing consistently, and again, all of those things Give us a quiet and boring project. And I think that's something that is not going to change. Throw in more automation, throw in more AI capabilities. It doesn't change the fact that we still have to be able to control things and keep the noise down and keep them quiet.
Yeah, spot on. And I think there's one element that is probably the most crucial, but also the most often overlooked element of any type of project or implementation or transformation of technology, and that's the organizational change, making sure that the people are ready for the amount of change that's going to happen. And I think we're seeing that exacerbated by the speed at which AI is changing. And I often tell the story that my first job in IT was as a programmer when I was 16 years old, writing software for a small restaurant chain for them to do their scheduling. And writing the program was surprisingly easy, and it was in Pascal or any other dinosaurs that remember that. Where the real challenge came in, and this was a very valuable lesson for me, is teaching these, what I considered at the time to be old people. They were in their 40s, I'm older than they are now, but teaching them how to use a computer, which they'd never done before, teaching them how to do their job differently, and then listening to it from some punk 16-year-old kid. That was my first lesson in the importance of organizational change management. And I think today, that is every bit, if not more important as an element of any successful transformation or any project. I think people, again, they get excited about the shiny technology, but they forget that this is still humans still run everything for now. So you have to make sure you're being conscious of that as well.
Yeah, a great
Mhm.
point.
Yeah, very true. And actually, if we could just pull it apart a little bit, but when we look at the amount of energy spent on these implementations, I think the energy spent on OCM is too little right now. It has to be 10x because the technology is getting easier and easier. It's vibe coding. It's coming out quicker to your point with AI, but the OCM level and the effort will not change. We're going to have to spend more time on it. It has to be a pillar. And when we talk about a boring project, the franchise model was one table leg of that.
Mhm.
But the other one is the OCM component. It's incredibly important when we talk about these implementations.
Yep.
Yeah, and I think when we're talking with prospective customers too, they're very focused on the technology portion of an implementation, and usually if they're looking to reduce costs, the first thing they look towards is removing that OCM or saying that they're going to do it internally. And time and time again, we recommend against that. And but we also know the reality is there's only so much funding to go around, and this seems like the easiest one to cut back on. If it were me, what I would prefer to see is let's scale back some of the technical capabilities and focus more on the transition, because you can always go back and add those technical abilities later on, but you can't do that if you don't have adoption and you don't have compliance from your user base.
Mhm. Yeah, because you're going to get into your roadmap. It's not one and done. And if you dial that back to a digestible piece of value, get the OCM correct, it just is a building block for the next project, which you will be doing as part of this journey. And another one past that and past that too, because the roadmap is the next piece that's important behind the fundamentals. Like, what's your vision? What are you doing next? Why are you getting value out of this? What's coming down for your organization that you should focus on to drive that value?
Yep.
All right. Any last thoughts on the fundamentals and change management and boring projects?
Yeah, one quick comment, James. You know, I think we're articulating it very well, but I think there's a closing statement there. AI or not, we are always going to have to control the pace of training and OCM for end users. We're always going to have non-technical users on these platforms. And the reality is that's every organization is going to have a pace that we need to match up with as far as rolling out new capabilities and providing the training and supporting the OCM.
Right. So we want to make sure that we always provide something in FoxTales that is of value for people to walk away with. So I'm going to put my panel on the spot here in just a moment and ask them to think of 3 moves that any organization can make in the next 30 days, whether it's AI, whether it's OCM, whether it's anything to do with fundamentals. But what are 3 moves that any organization can make to actually move the needle and make forward progress?
Can we jump in,
what
or
people
you
on the
want us
spot.
to? Me? I can
Yeah,
jump
go
in.
ahead, John.
Sure.
Um, so 3 moves any organization can make in the next 30 days. I'll pick on AI again because it's what we're talking about, but one I'll talk about tomorrow too. Um, I think I think not worrying about where others are in their AI journey is a good step because it's all different. I think for your organization, what I would do is just start with your strategy, and it has to be the roadmap again, what we talked about. What are you going to do in terms of AI that's going to add value? And back to, I think James or maybe Paul, you said it, like, what are the use cases for AI that aren't word summary or a chatbot? Like there's actual use cases that come up quickly. You're not going to do them all. Pick one. I was just talking to another client this past week. They just got down into the AI journey, and they're doing one AI process with the human in the middle, and they're learning from it. And that's what I recommend. Start with one, learn from it, learn what you liked about it, learn what the effort was, and learn what the OCM effort was too around it, because that's a big part of it. And then start to build on top of it, but have that roadmap defined and the strategy of where you want to go with it. And then also protect your data. The data is being thrown out everywhere right now, and it's going to be an issue at some point. It already is an issue at some point. So we're going to have to decide where our data governance is and what our roadmap is for AI.
Yeah, I'll piggyback on that. Great comments, John. I think what I would suggest, and I have suggested some of our, larger customers that are dealing with end of year, timeframes is I wouldn't stop the initiatives that you're working on today. Take the rest of Q4 and finish the work that was in progress. Don't allow something shiny and new to come in and disrupt those existing initiatives. Get those things wrapped up. And to John's point, I could not agree more. If you're looking at foundational elements, highly recommend focusing on that data governance as well. We're seeing it. It's super loose right now. The metaphor I use with customers is this is very much, wild, wild west at this point. We're trusting these SaaS-based companies that we've never heard of, and we're just allowing that data to fly everywhere. And, if you were to work at a more mature organization like a Booz Allen or something like that, they have policies and things in place to make sure that, that stuff's getting approved. But a lot of organizations don't. So focus on that data governance, focus on putting some new policies in place while you're finishing up those existing projects for Q4.
Yeah, and I think I would also add to take it slow. And that's counterproductive to what a lot of the business leaders, they want to move fast and break things, but I think it's the breaking things that is the risk. So rolling out too many features too fast it creates the opportunity to undermine confidence and capabilities. So if you try to uh, build something too quickly and you haven't really vetted it and it's not really doing what it was intended to, and you do that times 10 or times 50, you're really undercutting the ability to make real value gains out of that. So, find the use cases that are going to be most impactful to your business and start with those, and then you can continue to add incrementally over time. Don't just think you're going to wave a magic wand and suddenly you're going to be an AI company. That's not reality. That's just not how this is going to work well.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And I just want to add something too. We've thrown out a lot of terms around this, but there's a lot of different pressures on leadership now, a lot of different vendors, a lot of different noise. And one of the questions is, all right, how do I even start a roadmap? What I would do if I was a CIO, I would find the vendor that you trust, your trusted advisor, hope it's SnowFox, but whoever vendor that you actually use, that you trust will give you the right answers, and sit down and have a conversation with them and say, these are my pressures, these are my problems. Let's map this out for next quarter, the next year, the next 2 years, and start with that. Pulling in those team members that you actually trust to build that roadmap and have a discussion around it.
Good deal. All right, one last lightning round for my panelists here. Complete the sentence. Great delivery starts with, and we'll start with Paul on this one.
A good plan. When you're looking at implementations, when you're looking at, adding, take for example, maybe you're rolling out SPM on ServiceNow for the first time. a good plan and working with a partner that has been there and done that, and really has a good understanding of what you're wanting to build out. It all starts with a good plan.
John?
Well, Paul took my answer, so I got to think of something else. Great delivery.
Do what Paul says.
Yeah, great delivery starts with a mindset. And I'll start with that because in consulting, it took me a while to get here, and it takes a lot of people a while to get to that mindset. The way I view it is if we're doing consulting correct, we're the teacher in front of the classroom, and our students are our customers, and we are guiding them at different points of their learning journey to the right point. We all remember sitting at the kitchen table with dad trying to explain math to us. That was not the right way to do it, right? And so when we go through these implementations, it's not just a implementation, it's also education. And the way I think that great consultants lead into great delivery is they have that teacher mentality throughout the entire process. And it starts with the consultant.
Good deal. All right. Well, looking at the clock, we are closing in on the time that we scheduled. We want to be conscious of everybody's time. So I'm going to go ahead and bypass the live Q&A, but I do want to certainly make us available for anybody that has questions, whether it's around the boring project methodology or it's around roadmaps and AI and how quickly things are evolving, ServiceNow specific or not ServiceNow. We are more than happy to field questions and even get on a call and talk to anybody anytime about pretty much anything. I think John likes to talk to strangers about pig farming for some reason. So any questions that you have, feel free to email any of us on here, and or reach out in any way you can. We're all over LinkedIn. I'm sure you've seen all of our marketing. But we do want to thank everybody here who attended for being part of the first episode of FoxTales. This is going to be a monthly blog that we're going to be doing, so you can be looking for next month's schedule, and we will be rotating through the panelists and the guests that we have on, and hopefully be talking about a lot of real world use cases, so that this is a very valuable use of everybody's time. So again, thank you to both Paul and John for taking the time today, and thank you for everybody who signed on and was part of this first episode. So again, thank you very much, and feel free to reach out with any questions or discussions you'd like to have. Thank you much, everyone.